A young kid named George Stinney Jr., who lived in the oppressive heat of Alkali, South Carolina, tragically came to represent the egregious injustices that afflicted the country. It was a time when racism was pervasive and a person's fate was predetermined by the color of their skin, even before they spoke a word. George enjoyed the afternoon like any other child, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing on the horizon as the sun cast long shadows over the segregated town. However, on that fateful day, the winds of bigotry and discrimination blew fiercely, forever altering the course of George's young life. African-American residents of the racially segregated hamlet of Alkali in South Carolina faced numerous obstacles and hardships as a result of the climate that prejudice and discrimination fostered. Understanding the context in which George Stinney Jr.'s tragic narrative played out and illuminating the larger social and historical issues that contributed to his unfair treatment was made possible by the backdrop of institutional racism. When Betty June Binnicker, 11, and Mary Emma Thames, 7, were looking for flowers on their bicycles in Alkali on March 23, 1944, they came across George Stinney and his younger sister Amy. They stopped them and inquired about where to find maypops, the edible yellow fruit of passion flowers. The girls were supposedly last seen alive at that point. The two white girls, Binnicker and Thames, never returned home that day. As a result, hundreds of people in the Alkali, including Stinney's father, banded together to look for the girls. Dr. Asbury Cecil Bozard did not examine their bodies until the following day, when they were found dead in a muddy ditch. Although there were no obvious signs of a struggle, both girls died horrible deaths with severe head wounds. Thames had a 2-inch-long cut above her right brow and a hole that was drilling straight through her forehead into her skull, while Binnicker had taken at least 7 hits to the head. It was later discovered that the number of head injuries was at least 7. There was a rumor that the girls had stopped at a prominent white family's home on the day of their murders, but this was never confirmed. And the police did not seem to be looking for a white killer when Clarendon County law enforcement officers learned from a witness that Binnicker and Thames were seen talking. Bozard concluded that Binnicker and Thames had wounds that were likely caused by a round instrument about the size of a hammer. They went to his house, where George Stinney Jr. was immediately detained and subjected to an extended interrogation in a cramped space. Police asserted that George Stinney Jr. admitted to killing Binnicker and Thames after his attempt to have sex with one of the girls failed in the absence of his parents, a counsel, or any witnesses. I arrested a boy by the name of George Stinney. He then confessed and told me where to find a piece of iron about 15 inches long. He said he put it in a ditch about 6 feet from the bicycle. An officer by the name of H.S. Newman stated in a handwritten statement. At the time when 14 was the age of accountability and Stinney was allegedly responsible for the murder, Newman refused to disclose where Stinney had scattered around the community. About a month after the girls' deaths, the trial of George Stinney Jr. got underway at Clarendon County Courthouse. Charles Plowden, the court's designated attorney, did very little to defend his client throughout the 2-hour trial. Plowden neglected to offer any evidence that might have refuted the prosecution's case, such as calling witnesses to the stand. The most important piece of evidence against Stinney was his purported confession, but by the time of the trial, there was no record of the boy confessing to the killings. Stinney, 14, was encircled by strangers after a hearing, since he had not seen his parents in a few weeks and they had refrained from attending out of fear of being attacked by a white crowd. Stinney was found guilty of murder by the all-white jury, which did not advocate showing mercy. The 14-year-old was given the death by electrocution verdict on April 24, 1944. There were some objections to George Stinney Jr.'s execution in South Carolina. Due to Stinney's young age, organizers for both white and black ministerial unions petitioned Governor Olin Johnston for clemency. At the same time, hundreds of letters and telegrams begged the governor to show mercy to Stinney and flowed into the governor's office. Supporters of George Stinney invoked a variety of principles, such as the fundamental notion of justice and Christian justice. But in the end, none of them were sufficient to save George Stinney. George Stinney Jr. entered the execution chamber at the South Carolina State Penitentiary in Columbia on June 16, 1944, carrying a Bible under his arm. He sat in an adult-sized electric chair while weighing only 95 pounds and wearing a loose-fitting striped jumpsuit. He was so little that the state electrician had trouble fitting an electrode to his right leg and covering his face with a mask that was too wide for him. Stinney declined when asked if he had any parting comments by an assistant captain, saying instead, "No, sir. You do not want to mention anything about what you did," the prison doctor prodded. He said, "No, sir," once more. 2,400 volts raced through Stinney's body when officials flipped on the switch, causing the mask to come off. After 2 more electrical shocks, the incident was done. His eyes were big and watery, and saliva could be seen coming from his mouth for all the witnesses in the room to see. Soon after, Stinney was declared dead. After the kid was accused of murder, tried, found guilty, and put to death by the state in under 83 days, George Stinney's murder conviction was overturned in 2014. His siblings asserted that he had an alibi and that his confession was forced. He was babysitting the family cow at the time of the murders alongside his sister Amy. They also observed that Stinney denied killing Binnicker and Thames. According to Wilford Johnny Hunter, who claimed to be Stinney's cellmate, "Johnny, I didn't do it," he said. "I did not do anything wrong, so why would they kill me?" Judge Carmen T. Mullen overturned Stinney's murder conviction on December 17, 2014, after giving it much thought. She did so by describing the death penalty as a grave and basic injustice. The news that George Stinney Jr. had been cleared filled the hearts of his siblings with gladness. When they learned the news, says Stinney's sister, Katherine Robinson, it was like a cloud just moved away. After spending the previous 70 years appreciating that they had been able to live long enough to witness it, we were seated next to some pals. I put up my hands and thanked Jesus, thinking that someone had to be watching because this is what we had been hoping for so long. The tragic tale of George Stinney Jr. reverberates far beyond the bounds of a single case, casting a harsh light on the systematic racism ingrained in the criminal justice system and its larger ramifications. His experience is a potent catalyst to encourage introspection, comprehension, and the urgent need for change. Let George Stinney Jr.'s tale serve as a reminder to always fight against discrimination and to never forget the lives lost to racial injustice. Together, we can build a just society where the lessons of the past help us move forward into a more promising and equitable future.